picked up a Danforth Constellation Express compass because our compass is gone. I don't know what the hell happened to it, but it was a little beat up, this thing, and it was leaking oil. You see the globe's got some scuffs and all that, and this is the diaphragm out of the bottom, and it's melting, which is why it was leaking oil, because it had, you know, a big hole in the bottom basically. But we like finding antiques for the boat and restoring them to get more life out of it. This is the binnacle base for it. This is quite an old unit. I mean, this unit is somewhere between 1947 and 1980, but based on the parts, this is the visor, and then again the binnacle base looks like black. It's looks like plastic, but it's not. It's actually Bakelite. So that means it's probably, most likely, this was produced, based on what I'm seeing, I'm guessing this thing was probably produced in the 60s or 70s. So, you know, the visor was broken. The ears on it are broken off. So I'm just getting ready to spin up, to put a couple of pins in there to index it and to provide a little bit of backbone. And then I'll use 5-minute epoxy in there to put that back together. Once that's done, I'll grind out this gap, or this crack that's left all the way around. I'll grind it out and use JB Weld to fill that in. And then I'll sand the whole thing out. But the binnacle is in pretty good shape. It really doesn't need much, just cleaned up. I need to take this adjustment base off. This is how you calibrate the compass. It's got little magnetic pieces in there that you can use to adjust the compass's deviation. But that needs to come off and get sandblasted. This will get sanded and primed and painted. This, I'll fix the ears on it. Originally, somebody had tried real hard to do a decent repair on this thing, but God knows how long ago it was. Based on the nature of the epoxy that was left and the fiberglass that they had done, I'd say it was quite a while ago, probably 20 years or so. But anyway, they had put this strap on there and drilled it in and riveted it, and it wasn't fitting very well, and they had glued the ears back on at one point, and the epoxy had just failed. You know, epoxy is not a fan of the sun. So you've got this you know, compass sitting out in the cockpit getting blasted by, you know, UV radiation from all sides, and what they had done is fiberglassed, if I can find a piece of it. This is a piece from under the visor. They had actually fiberglassed what looks like probably 6-ounce like surfboard cloth over the outside and edges, and then painted it, which was, you know, that was probably the best way they could fix it, and that's not terrible. But, you know, fiberglass that's unprotected from the sun eventually will break down. Polyester or epoxy, but based on what I'm seeing, it looks like they used epoxy because it was discolored and it looked like epoxy that was failing. So anyway, it was in pretty ragged shape. So I'm cleaning it up, getting the ears pinned and glued back in place. I'll set that aside and let that cure. And then once it's done, take the Dremel and we'll grind out the crack all the way around, JB Weld that, and then go over this. It's got a little bit of some defects, little, you know, dings and shit, and then all these holes from the rivets. So thankfully, when he put the rivets in, it didn't shatter because, you know, Bakelite's a little bit brittle, and it doesn't like expansive force. So I'm shocked that it didn't, you know, disintegrate. But I'll try to get a little bit of film of the stuff I'm doing with this visor, and of course the parts. I ordered the parts yesterday. They're coming U.S. mail, so who knows, 4 to 6 weeks before I get those, God knows. But whenever they get in, then we'll get this compass rebuilt. But in the meantime, I've got to deal with the Bakelite parts and get them sorted out. I need to sandblast this ring, and maybe I'll leave that bronze and just clear coat it. The top ring that goes around the dome is bronze as well, and I may just blast it and clear coat it to keep it bronze, and it'll contrast nice with all of the black. But the housing itself, this bit down here, is bronze as well. I'm probably going to blast that too. I don't know if I will leave that bronze or if I'll probably paint it, because honestly 95% of that's covered. It sits down inside the binnacle, so I doubt it's going to be seen, and I'd rather paint it, and that way I know it's the corrosion is kept off of it. You know, we like to find old parts where we can that are still serviceable and try to put them back into service. Maybe, you know, maybe not necessarily high priority parts, but things like the compass and the ship's bell that we got off of a, God, can't remember now, like a 1931 sailboat or a 1934 sailboat. But you know, we try to reuse these things if we can, and you know, in the process of that, the biggest part of that problem or that process, I guess you could say, is finding parts. You know, sometimes you can't find parts, and if you can't find parts and you can't make the parts, then you're kind of SOL. But all I ordered was this gimbal ring, a new diaphragm for the bottom, a new gasket for the dome, and a new dome, and it was $215. So, you know, thankfully I don't have to repair this very often, or that would be problematic. But I took the time and went through this. You guys will remember this visor was in really rotten shape, and it had a metal strap wrapped around it here, and it was both of these ears were broken. You know, so I went back, I took the time, dissected it, dug out all the old epoxy, where, you know, the people that had tried to repair it in the past, you know, did a reasonable job for what they had to work with. They were doing their best. But so I went through and glued these ears back on, but I put steel pins into it and then glued it, clamped it, let it sit overnight, came back, sanded that out, filled in the, you know, ground out the cracks with the Dremel, and backfilled it with JB Weld. And then the screw holes around the front, I filled those with JB Weld, and then sanded the whole thing out real good, because again, these are Bakelite. So sanded the whole thing out. I think they're Bakelite. They're either Bakelite or a really oddball plastic I've never seen before. But anyway, and they're not perfect. You know, there's still a little bit of you know, imperfections where the screws were and all that. I'm not worried about this thing being museum quality. I wanted it to look decent. You know, this visor sits up on here most of the time like that. You're not really looking at it cautiously, but I wanted to try to get some of the defects out of it. And really, more importantly, I wanted to fill in those spaces and get them solidified so that it wasn't a new place for it to crack. So again, we got rid of the band, went through, primed it, sanded it again, and then shot it in a hammered texture paint. So again, the texture kind of, you know, helps the defects to sort of disappear. So I did that with this and this base. This is the binnacle. So did that just to clean those up and get those looking better. The base ring, all of this metal, all this bronze on here was painted before. But I thought, well, you know, it'd be a pretty cool effect to you know, to see some of that bronze. So basically, you know, that will go on like that. This goes back inside of here. And, you know, you get a little bit of a different look because you can see a little bit of the bronze. So I went through and buffed those out and didn't do a very good job of wearing my mask. I was wearing a mask, but it was leaking, so I ended up sucking in a bunch of bronze dust, so that was If you've ever inhaled bronze dust, you'll know that it's a unique flavor that stays with you for about 3 or 4 days. But so anyway, I went through and did that, cleaned those up, you know, remarked the north-south, east-west markings on there with acrylic paint, and then I clear coated all of these parts in lacquer to try to, you know, prevent those from corroding. Now, of course, they'll get scratched or whatever, and they'll corrode a little bit here and there, but that's just sort of the charm of it. And this, of course, is all bronze, but I went through and repainted this section simply because it's not really visible, but it was starting to wear through and it was getting corroded, so I wanted to get that back together. But Viking does have these exploded view diagrams. They are, I'm guessing, probably from old parts catalogs, because they do have numbers, and to my knowledge the numbers don't really correlate to what they have on their page. But and the parts that they have available are minimal. Thankfully they had, you know, the rubber and some of the plastic stuff that needed to be done, but for the most part it's kind of hit or miss. I'm in the middle of building battery packs, but then I ran out of certain materials, so I'm halfway through one pack and realized that I was missing a bunch of ends that I needed, and yeah, so I had to order that and been waiting on that, and their shit's not coming until, I absolutely hate trying to work on this boat and need anything around Christmas time. If you haven't gotten it by Thanksgiving, good luck. It's just, it turns into a nightmare. Nothing is delivered on time, and you know, things that Amazon will tell you, oh, it'll be a 2-day delivery, and then, you know, as soon as you place the order, you will go back and it'll say, then it'll give you a block of time that's like 2 weeks long. It'll be here in this time frame. Well, that's not doing a damn thing for me. So much of these projects on this boat are dovetailed together where they're overlapping, so if you get jammed up on one particular project, it could screw you up for a month trying to figure out, you know, when the hell something's coming in and how to you know, work around that delay, and it's just a mess. I try to work in advance as much as I possibly can, but you know, it's not always possible. So you know, you do what you can, but so anyway, so you know, it's just, this is what it ends up being, and this time of the year is difficult anyway because I'm getting I'm having to work on projects based on weather, and you know, I'm having to juggle all of that, and it just makes it a lot more challenging. I'm trying to see this thing. Let's see here. Those screws there. This thing has to fit in this cup like this. So that has to be in there. Okay, so that has to actually be like this. And this has to go here. I'm telling you, man, taking pictures of stuff as you're taking them apart, that's the thing to do. If you're not used to doing this kind of crap, there's your tip for today. Take good notes, photo document. I'm telling you what, the cell phone camera is probably the best thing that ever happened to any of us, because it makes it so easy to document this stuff on the fly. And that's my public service announcement for the day. I'm sure it won't be the last, but it's the only one I can think of right now. Okay, so that's got that. So that takes care of the binnacle, so we'll set that aside. This cup, this needs to go back in a way where it lines up Okay, so we've got screw holes that need to line up with this. So we know that needs to be like that, right? Right. So that needs to be like that. There is no front or back on this portion, so that's good. But that means that this needs to be like this. This cup needs to fit on here so that that plunger is lined up there, and there are holes in the bottom of this flange. Nope, gotta go back here, that line up to screw that down. Okay, so that's what needs to be there. That needs to go on like that. Good. Good, good. This is like C-spot run stuff, but there's a great deal of pride that I get from repairing old stuff, 2, 4, 6, from repairing old stuff or resurrecting old parts or whatever that you just don't get from opening a box and getting a new anything. I've always found that to be very gratifying, and I'm thankful when I'm able to do it, because you can't always do that, unfortunately. Sometimes things are just beyond repair or what have you, but I really go out of my way to try to make damn sure that I can fix as many things as possible. Okay, so those are for the upper ring. So the other thing is I just threw all these screws in the bin, but I probably should have done a better job of separating those and putting them in bags, but I didn't because there was only a few different screws on here and it was all different quantities, so you can count through and figure it out. There's a lot of things you do in the course of this kind of stuff that is probably not the brightest, but if you can work your way out of it, then you know it's all right. But I could definitely work smarter in a lot of ways, a lot of times, but you know, it is what it is. I'm literally refitting an entire 52-foot boat, and I say that I'm doing it mostly by myself, which isn't strictly true because Gina does a lot, but when it comes to sourcing materials and products, creating, you know, work lines, scheduling things, planning things, calculating weight and balance, figuring out strength and load, I do all that. So in a lot of ways, I'm on my own for the meat and potato stuff. And thank God for her that she can do the finishing work, and she does the scut work, clean up and organization and stuff like that that I just don't have the time or the patience to deal with. And it spares me that agony so that I can focus on the agony that it's all mine. So, it may sound stupid or chauvinistic or whatever the hell you want to call it, but we have a division of labor in this project that I find very beneficial to me, and I think she feels the same because she gets to see the progress of this coming together, and I get to figure out what the hell's going to happen next. So it's a real joy, but I'm thankful every day to have a good woman and a good partner. And honestly, I work better, much better when she's around. I'm happier, even if we're not in the same room or not working on the same thing, which rarely do we work on the same thing at the same time, but I am a far happier human being when she's on the boat or in the shop or in the house working on stuff while I'm doing something else. My wife is the most important person in the world to me, and I'm putting together an offshore boat, a blue water boat that is basically like a giant pointy life support system. And if I make mistakes or overlook something or do something stupid, that could kill her or me or both. And it's an unacceptable risk. So I agonize over this stuff. I stress about it every minute of every day, trying to make sure I get it all right. So,
if you've been enjoying these projects and want to follow along as we bring Olivia back to life, we'd love to have you with us.
just going through, basically I'm just snugging these down in sequence to make sure that they tighten down evenly, because again, this ring has a bevel on the inside of it, so this dome fits down into a groove. This ring goes down on top of the O-ring, and then the inside of this ring has a chamfer. So as you tighten it down, it pushes the ring in and down to seal that gap. Again, kind of an old school way to do it, but effective. I mean, the reason they did it is because it worked, you know, and it wasn't over-engineered stupidity like half the crap that's made now. But anyway, when I was tightening this down before, the ring was coming down really far on one side and not so far on the other, so that meant it was uneven, and I tightened it in sequence like that. So that told me that the O-ring was sticking to the dome. So I laid it out on a paper towel, shot it with some silicone spray, lubed up that O-ring. Actually, I shot this lens first with some silicone, let it sit for a couple minutes to make sure it wasn't incompatible with that plastic, and it wasn't. I didn't want to get it on there and have it melt it, because that thing was not cheap either. So anyway, I just did that so that the O-ring would not stick to the plastic, which is what it was doing. So it was going down on one side and it was stuck higher up on the other. And then just tighten it in series so that I have a uniform gap all the way around, which it's as perfect as it's going to get. So that's that. But anyway, so that's just about it. All I need to do now is fill this thing.
The compass is finished, filled, and ready to guide us again. Next up, Sean takes on the house battery banks, built with LiFePO 4 lithium iron phosphate batteries, bringing us one step closer to dependable power on Olivia. Thanks for following along.